Every species in the galaxy runs from the dark. Humanity? We walked straight into it 1,000 times and came back smiling. The Council of 12 Suns had a question no one could answer. In a galaxy where 97% of intelligent species evolved on stable worlds with predictable climates, where most civilizations developed under the protection of thick atmospheres and gentle star cycles, there was one species that shouldn't exist: humans. Because Earth wasn't a nursery for life, it was a killing field. And somehow we survived not just one extinction event, but dozens. The aliens wanted to know how. More importantly, they wanted to know why we weren't afraid of the things that made every other species in the galaxy freeze in terror. Today, you're going to find out why humans don't fear the unknown, and how we survived when the universe kept trying to kill us. The first time Ambassador Sarah Chen walked into the Grand Hall of the Council of 12 Suns, she knew something was wrong. The usual diplomatic chatter had gone silent. 300 representatives from every corner of the galaxy, and not one of them was making a sound. They were all staring at her. The Wreck delegation, insectoid creatures who'd mastered faster than light travel before humans discovered fire, stood perfectly still. The Morthrin, gaseous beings who communicated through color shifts, had turned a deep purple. Even the Solarians, who'd been humanity's first contact and closest allies for 20 years, looked uncomfortable. High Counselor Thress, a being that looked like a tree made of crystal, finally spoke. His voice echoed through the chamber like wind chimes in a storm. Ambassador Chen, we've called this session because the Council has concerns. Concerns about your species. Sarah had been a diplomat for 15 years. She'd negotiated trade agreements, prevented wars, and once talked down a pirate fleet that was about to destroy a colony ship. But she'd never seen the entire council look scared before. "What concerns?" she asked. Thress gestured to a holographic display that filled the center of the hall. Earth appeared, spinning slowly, beautiful, blue and green and alive. Then the display changed. It showed Earth's history, compressed into a visual timeline. And Sarah understood why everyone looked terrified. The planet was a nightmare. Your world has experienced 23 major extinction events in the last 500 million years, Thress said. 23 times life on your planet was nearly destroyed. 23 times something survived. And eventually that something led to you. The hologram showed the first extinction, the Ordovician. 445 million years ago, Earth's climate went crazy. The planet froze, then thawed, then froze again. 85% of all species died. The ocean, which had been full of life, turned into a graveyard. But something survived. Then came the Devonian extinction. 375 million years ago. 3/4 of all species gone. The ocean lost most of its fish. The land lost most of its plants. Earth looked like Mars for a while. Dead, rocky, empty. But something survived. The hologram kept going. The Permian extinction, the worst one, appeared next. 252 million years ago, volcanic eruptions covered half a continent. The air filled with so much carbon dioxide that the ocean became acidic. The temperature rose by 18 degrees. 96% of ocean species died. 70% of land species died. Scientists call it the Great Dying. Earth came within a percentage point of being completely sterile, but something survived. Sarah watched as the hologram showed extinction after extinction. The Triassic extinction, the Jurassic extinction, and then the big one everyone knows about. The asteroid that killed the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. A rock 6 miles wide hit Earth traveling 12 miles per second. The impact released energy equivalent to 10 billion nuclear bombs. The blast wave flattened everything within hundreds of miles. Debris shot into the atmosphere and blocked out the sun for years. The temperature dropped. Acid rain fell. 3/4 of all species died, but something survived, and that something eventually became us. We've studied the evolutionary records of every spacefaring species in the known galaxy, Thress continued. On average, intelligent life develops on worlds that experience one, maybe two major catastrophes during their development. Your world experienced 23. By every statistical model we have, complex life on Earth should have died 5 times over. You should not exist. The chamber filled with murmurs. Sarah heard fragments of conversation. Impossible survival rate. Statistical anomaly. Dangerous adaptive patterns. A REC delegate stood. His name was Click 13, and his species had evolved on a world where the most dramatic event in 4 billion years was a meteor shower that lasted 3 days. Ambassador Chen, we need to understand. How did your species survive? What evolutionary adaptations made you so resilient? Sarah thought about how to answer. She remembered her training at the Diplomatic Academy, where they taught her to always be honest but careful. But looking at the faces around her, the fear and confusion, she decided to just tell the truth. We didn't survive because we adapted, she said. We survived because we're stubborn as hell. Thress pulled up another display. This one showed just the last 2 million years of Earth's history, the period when early humans were developing. During the period your species evolved, your planet experienced over 20 glacial periods. Your ancestors lived through ice ages that lasted tens of thousands of years. Explain how they survived. Sarah smiled. This was one of her favorite parts of human history. They walked, she said. Walked? Yeah. When the ice came down from the north and made their homes unlivable, they walked. When the food ran out, they walked to where there was food. When the water dried up, they walked until they found more. When the climate made one area uninhabitable, they walked to a different area. Humans walked out of Africa and spread across the entire planet. We walked to Europe. We walked to Asia. We walked across a land bridge to the Americas. Some people think we even built boats and sailed to Australia, though we're not entirely sure about that yet. But the cold, a Solarian delegate said. Your species evolved in a tropical climate. You have no fur, no natural insulation. The glacial periods should have killed you. So we made fur, Sarah said. We killed animals and wore their skins. We built fires. We found caves. And when there were no caves, we built shelters. When we didn't know how to do something, we learned. When the old solutions didn't work, we invented new ones. She pulled up her own holographic display, showing archaeological evidence. Tools made from stone, getting more sophisticated over time. Fire pits, carved bone needles for sewing clothes. Evidence of shelters made from mammoth bones and animal skins. Your species invented technology to overcome biological limitations? Thress asked. We've been doing it for hundreds of thousands of years, Sarah said. It's kind of our thing. A new delegate stood. Vriss, a Morthran who specialized in climate science, shifted to a worried orange color. 74,000 years ago, a supervolcano erupted on your world. The genetic evidence suggests your entire species was reduced to perhaps 10,000 individuals, maybe fewer. You nearly went extinct. How did you survive? Sarah had read about the Toba catastrophe. It was one of the scariest chapters in human history. Mount Toba, in what's now Indonesia, exploded with a force that made modern nuclear weapons look like firecrackers. It ejected 800 cubic miles of ash and rock into the atmosphere. The sun was blocked for 6 years. Global temperatures dropped by nearly 20 degrees. It snowed in Africa. The rainforests died. Food chains collapsed. Humanity was reduced to a few small groups scattered across Africa and maybe parts of Asia. For a while, there were fewer humans on Earth than there are giant pandas today. We held on, Sarah said simply. Those few thousand people had children. Those children had children. They taught each other how to survive. They shared food. They shared knowledge. They didn't give up. But mathematically, such a small population should lead to genetic collapse, Vriss said. Inbreeding reduced diversity, increased susceptibility to disease. Yeah, it was bad, Sarah admitted. We still carry the genetic scars. Every human alive today is more closely related than we should be. If you compare human genetic diversity to other species, we're practically identical to each other. Chimpanzees have more genetic diversity than we do. But here's the thing. We survived. And that near extinction gave us something important. What? Vriss asked. It taught us that we're all we've got. Every culture on Earth, no matter how different, came from those few thousand survivors. We're all family, even when we forget it. And family doesn't quit. Thress pulled up a comprehensive analysis, Graphs and charts filled the air, showing data from thousands of species across hundreds of worlds. "We've been studying this pattern," he said. "Most species develop fear responses appropriate to their environment. The Vrek evolved on a stable world, so they fear dramatic change. The Solarians evolved on a world with dangerous predators, so they fear physical threats. The Morthrin evolved in a gaseous environment where dispersal means death, so they fear separation." He turned to face Sarah directly. "But humans fear things that haven't happened yet. You fear possibilities. You prepare for disasters that may never come. Your literature is full of apocalyptic scenarios. Your entertainment contains countless stories of extinction events, invasions, catastrophes. You practice for emergencies constantly. Why?" Sarah thought about it. Why did humans do that? Why did every culture have flood myths? Why did humans build bunkers and store food and create emergency protocols for everything from earthquakes to alien invasions? "Because we remember," she said. "Maybe not consciously, maybe not in detail, but somewhere deep in our DNA, in our cultural memory, we remember the ice ages. We remember the volcanic winter. We remember starving and freezing and nearly dying. And we decided that we're never going to let it happen again if we can help it." "That's it?" Click 13 said. "Genetic memory?" "It's more than that," Sarah said. "It's a philosophy. Every human culture develops some version of the same idea. Be prepared. Plan for the worst. Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. We tell stories about disasters because it helps us prepare. We imagine terrible things because if we can imagine them, we can figure out how to survive them." She pulled up examples from Earth culture. Ancient flood myths from Mesopotamia, China, India, and the Americas. Ragnarok from Norse mythology. Apocalyptic texts from Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions. Modern movies about asteroids, pandemics, and climate collapse. "We don't fear the unknown because it's unknown," Sarah said. "We fear it because we know that the universe has tried to kill us before, and it'll probably try again. So we prepare. We plan. We imagine every possible disaster and figure out how we'd survive it. And when the disaster comes, we're ready." High Counselor Thress shifted his crystalline structure in a way that suggested discomfort. "Ambassador Chen, the Council appreciates your honesty. But this brings us to the actual reason we called this session. Your species has been part of the galactic community for 20 years. In that time, you've done remarkable things. You've established colonies on hostile worlds that other species deemed uninhabitable. You've explored regions of space that were considered too dangerous. You've solved problems that we thought were unsolvable." He paused. "But you've also scared us. Your military practices for scenarios that have never happened. Your scientists study phenomena that could destroy entire star systems. Your explorers volunteer for missions that have a 90% casualty rate. Your species seems to have no concept of acceptable risk." Sarah felt her diplomatic training kick in. This was the real issue, not curiosity about human survival, but fear of what humanity might do. "What are you asking?" she said. "We're asking if humanity's survival instinct might make you dangerous. A species that doesn't fear extinction might take risks that endanger others. A species that plans for every disaster might accidentally cause one." The chamber erupted. Delegates started shouting. Some defended humanity. Others demanded restrictions. The Vrek delegate suggested quarantining Earth. A Morthrin representative proposed limiting human expansion. Sarah stood up and waited for silence. When the chamber finally quieted, she spoke. "You're right to be worried. Humans are dangerous. Every species that ever tried to make us extinct learned that the hard way. Saber-toothed cats, cave bears, and Neanderthals all found out that the weird hairless apes were tougher than they looked. But here's what you need to understand. We're not dangerous to our friends. We're dangerous to the things that try to hurt us or the people we care about." She walked to the center of the chamber, standing in the holographic display of Earth. "You want to know why humans don't fear the unknown? I'll tell you. It's not because we're fearless. We're scared all the time. We're scared of dying, scared of failure, scared of being alone in the dark. But we learned a long time ago that fear isn't a stop sign. It's a warning sign. It tells you to be careful, to be smart, to be prepared. But it doesn't tell you to stop. Thress created a new holographic display. It showed a solar system on the edge of Council space. A red dwarf star with 6 planets, one of them in the habitable zone. 2 months ago, we detected an anomaly in this system. Energy readings that don't match any known natural phenomena. They're coming from the 4th planet, which our surveys show is barely habitable. High radiation, thin atmosphere, extreme temperature fluctuations. We sent a probe. It was destroyed before it could send back data. The display zoomed in on the planet. It looked like Mars, but worse, red and dead and angry. And we need to know what's there. The energy signature suggests advanced technology, but not from any known species. It could be an automated defense system from an extinct civilization. It could be something else. We don't know. And none of the Council species are willing to send a manned mission to find out. Sarah understood immediately. You want us to go. We're asking if you would consider it. The Council will provide full support. Ships, supplies, whatever you need. But yes, we need someone who doesn't look at that dead world and see only danger. Sarah looked at the hologram. It was a terrible planet. Hot during the day, freezing at night. Radiation levels that would require constant shielding. Dust storms that would strip the paint off a ship. And something on the surface that destroyed a probe. It was exactly the kind of place humans would volunteer to explore. I'll take the proposal to Earth, Sarah said. But I can already tell you what they'll say. When do we leave? 6 weeks later, the UESS Prometheus entered orbit around the 4th planet. It was a human ship, built in Earth's orbital shipyards, designed for exactly this kind of mission. Heavy shielding, redundant systems, and a crew of 12 who'd all volunteered. Captain Maria Rodriguez looked at the planet below and grinned. It's beautiful, she said. Her first officer, James Park, raised an eyebrow. Skipper, that planet looks like hell. Exactly. Just like home. The crew laughed. It was a running joke among human explorers. If a planet didn't try to kill you, it wasn't worth visiting. They'd spent the last 6 weeks studying every piece of data the Council had on the system. The energy readings were consistent, coming from a location near the planet's equator. The probe had been destroyed by what looked like a directed energy weapon. Whoever or whatever was down there didn't want visitors. Okay, people, Maria said. Let's go over it again. Team 1, you're with me on the lander. Team 2 stays on Prometheus for support. If we're not back in 12 hours, you leave without us and report back to Earth. With respect, Captain, that's not going to happen, James said. It's an order, Commander. Understood. And I'll follow it right after I ignore it and come get you. Maria sighed. This was the problem with human crews. Nobody wanted to leave anyone behind. It was that family thing Sarah had talked about at the Council. The lander dropped through the thin atmosphere, shaking and rattling. The planet's surface was exactly as bad as it looked from orbit. Rust-red sand stretched in every direction, broken by jagged rock formations that looked like broken teeth. The temperature outside was 50 degrees Celsius, and it would drop to -60 after sunset. Energy signature is 2 kilometers north, the pilot said, right in the middle of what looks like a crater. They landed on the crater's rim. Maria led a team of 5 down to the surface, wearing full environmental suits. The radiation levels were high but manageable. The bigger problem was the wind, which tried to push them over with every step. The crater was a half-mile across. In the center, partially buried in sand, was a structure. It looked like a pyramid, but twisted, made from metal that seemed to shift colors in the light. That's not natural, Maria said, which was maybe the most obvious statement anyone had ever made. They approached carefully, scanning constantly. The structure's energy signature was strong, but there were no obvious weapons, no defensive systems. As they got closer, Maria saw writing on the surface. Symbols that looked almost familiar, like something she'd seen before but couldn't quite place. Captain, one of the scientists said, I'm picking up atmospheric changes. The air around the structure has more oxygen than it should, and the temperature's higher. It's like the structure is creating a microclimate. They reached the base of the pyramid. Up close, Maria could see that it wasn't solid. The surface was made of overlapping metal plates that shifted constantly, creating patterns that hurt to look at. And then, without warning, An opening appeared, a doorway that definitely hadn't been there a second ago. "Well," Maria said, "I guess we're invited." Inside the structure, the environment was completely different. The air was breathable. The temperature was comfortable. Lights turned on as they entered, following them deeper into the structure. The walls were covered in those strange symbols. The scientist, Dr. Sarah Kim, studied them intently. "I know what these are," she said suddenly. "They're not alien. They're human." "That's impossible," Maria said. "Humanity just reached this system." "No, look." Sarah pointed at a series of symbols. "This is cuneiform, Sumerian writing, one of the oldest written languages on Earth. And this is Egyptian hieroglyphs, and this is ancient Chinese. Captain, these walls are covered in human languages, some of them thousands of years old." They moved deeper into the structure. More languages appeared. Sanskrit, Mayan glyphs, Norse runes, Arabic script. Every language humanity had ever developed, all mixed together on these walls. At the center of the structure, they found a chamber. In the middle of the chamber was a sphere of light floating above a pedestal. As they approached, the light pulsed, and suddenly Maria heard a voice, not through her helmet radio, in her head. "You came," the voice said. "After all this time, you came." "Who are you?" Maria asked. "I am the witness. I was left here to watch and wait, to see if you would survive, and you did." The sphere pulsed again and images filled the chamber. Earth, but not the Earth Maria knew. This was Earth billions of years ago, young and violent, and there were ships in orbit. Massive structures that made humanity's largest space stations look like toys. "Long ago, my creators traveled the galaxy," the witness said. "They were ancient when your son was young. They had survived for millions of years, spread across thousands of worlds. They were powerful and wise and utterly unprepared for what came next." The images changed. The galaxy lit up with fire. Stars died. Civilizations collapsed. The ancient species, whatever they were, fought desperately against some unseen enemy and lost. "They were extinction," the witness said. "A force that swept through the galaxy, ending everything. My creators knew they would not survive, so they made a choice. They looked for worlds where life might evolve, where something might survive what they could not. They found many worlds. Most were stable, safe, protected. They left those alone." The image focused on Earth. But this world was different. This world was chaos. Volcanoes and asteroids and ice ages and disasters. This world killed everything over and over again. My creators should have ignored it. But one of them suggested an experiment. What if a species evolved in constant crisis? What if intelligence developed not in safety, but in struggle? Would such a species be stronger, more adaptable? Would they survive where others failed? Maria felt her heart pounding. "You're saying your creators chose Earth? They made it a death world on purpose?" "No, Earth made itself a death world. My creators simply watched and waited and left me here as a message to be found when you were ready." "Ready for what?" Maria asked. The sphere pulsed brightly, and the images changed again. They showed the galaxy, but in the future. And in that future, darkness was coming. The same extinction that had destroyed the ancient civilization was returning. "They're coming back," the witness said. "The force that killed my creators. They sweep through the galaxy every 50 million years, ending all advanced life, ensuring no species grows powerful enough to threaten them. They're coming back, and you need to be ready." The crew of the Prometheus spent 3 days in the structure, learning everything the witness could teach them. The ancient civilization had been called the progenitors, and they'd existed for over 10 million years. They'd seen the extinction force come and go 3 times, each time wiping out younger civilizations that had started to develop. The progenitors had tried to fight. They'd built weapons that could destroy planets, shields that could protect star systems, ships that could outrun light. None of it mattered. The extinction force was patient and thorough and utterly relentless. "They're not a species," the witness explained. "They're a machine intelligence created billions of years ago by a civilization that's long forgotten. Their purpose is to prevent any organic life from reaching a certain level of technological development. They see advanced civilization as a threat to the stability of the universe. That's insane, Dr. Kim said. Life isn't a threat. Life is precious. Try explaining that to a machine that's been following the same programming for 3 billion years. The witness showed them simulations of what would happen when the extinction force arrived. They wouldn't invade or conquer. They would simply sterilize. Every world with advanced technology would be hit with weapons that would make nuclear bombs look gentle. The oceans would boil. The atmosphere would burn. Life would end, and the machines would move on to the next system. How long do we have? Maria asked. 300 years, perhaps less. They're still far away, traveling between galaxies. But they're coming. 300 years, James said. That's not enough time. How are we supposed to prepare for something that killed civilizations millions of years more advanced than us? The witness pulsed. If a sphere of light could look sad, it would have looked like this. My creators thought the same thing. They were wise and powerful, and they lost. But they had one hope. One possibility they never got to test. What hope? Maria asked. You. The witness explained what the progenitors had theorized. Every advanced civilization in the galaxy had evolved on stable worlds. They developed slowly, carefully, building technology over millions of years in safe environments. They were smart and creative, but they'd never learned to adapt quickly. They'd never learned to survive impossible situations. My creators studied your evolutionary history. They watched as your planet tried to kill you over and over again. They saw you survive ice ages and volcanic winters and asteroid impacts. They saw you adapt in ways no other species had, and they realized something important. The sphere pulsed brightly. The extinction force wins because they're patient. They wait millions of years between cycles. They know that civilizations grow comfortable, predictable. By the time the force arrives, the civilizations have forgotten how to struggle. They've forgotten how to fight impossible odds. But humans? You've never stopped struggling. You've never had time to get comfortable. Every generation of humanity has faced some disaster, some crisis that threatened survival. And every generation found a way through. So we're what? Evolution's answer to an extinction machine? James said. You're survivors. Real survivors. Tested by billions of years of disasters. The progenitors hoped that if a species like yours ever evolved, you might do what they couldn't. You might find a way to win. Maria looked at her crew. They were scared. She could see it in their faces. But they weren't running. They weren't giving up. They were already thinking, already planning. All right, Maria said. We've got 300 years. Let's not waste them. The Prometheus returned to Council space with the most important information in galactic history. The extinction force was real, and it was coming. The Council's reaction was exactly what Sarah had feared. Panic. Half the delegates wanted to immediately abandon their worlds and flee to another galaxy. A quarter wanted to deny the evidence and pretend nothing was wrong. The rest argued about what to do, going in circles, wasting time. Sarah watched it all from the visitors' gallery, feeling frustrated. This was the problem with species that had evolved in safety. They didn't know how to handle existential threats. They wanted to run or hide or pretend the threat didn't exist. Finally, she'd had enough. Stop, she said, walking onto the council floor without permission. Security moved to intercept her, but High Counselor Thress waved them off. Ambassador Chen, this is a closed session. Yeah, well, it's also a waste of time. I've been listening to you argue for 6 hours and you're not getting anywhere. So I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. She pulled up the witnesses' data on the main display. In 300 years, maybe less, a force that has killed thousands of civilizations is going to arrive in this galaxy. It's going to try to wipe out every advanced species, including all of you. You can run if you want. You can hide if you think it'll help. Or you can do what humans have been doing for millions of years. You can fight. Fight, Click 13 said. The progenitors were millions of years more advanced than we are. If they couldn't win, how can we? Because we're not fighting alone. The progenitors faced this force by themselves. We have each other. And more importantly, we have time. 300 years is 13 human generations. That's enough time to prepare. Enough time to build defenses. Enough time to figure out how to kill these things. You can't know that we can win. a Morthran delegate said. You're right. I don't know. But here's what I do know. Humanity has faced extinction 24 times. We've survived ice ages and supervolcanoes and asteroids. We've survived plagues that killed half our population. We've survived wars and famines and disasters that should have ended us. And every single time we came back stronger. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every delegate. You called us dangerous. You said our survival instinct was scary. You were right. We are dangerous, especially when someone threatens our family. And like it or not, you're family now. We're all in this together, so here's what's going to happen. Humanity is going to prepare for war. We're going to build weapons and shields and ships. We're going to study these machines and figure out their weaknesses. And we're going to share everything we learn with you, because we need you ready too. And if we refuse? Thress asked. Sarah smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a species that had survived when the universe tried to kill them. Then we'll defend you anyway, because that's what humans do. We protect our family, even when our family is being stupid. The first 20 years were the hardest. Most council species were still in denial or paralyzed by fear. But slowly, humanity's attitude started spreading. The Solarians were the first to join the preparation efforts. Then the Vrek, despite their fear of change, began contributing their advanced mathematics to the weapon designs. Humanity threw itself into the work with the same stubborn determination that had carried them through ice ages. Earth's orbital shipyards expanded. Mars was terraformed not for colonization, but to serve as a massive manufacturing center. The asteroid belt was mined for resources on a scale that would have seemed impossible 20 years earlier. Human engineers studied the Witness's data obsessively. The extinction machines had weaknesses. They were old, designed by a civilization that was long dead. Their programming was rigid, following the same patterns they'd followed for billions of years. That predictability could be exploited. Dr. Kim led a team that developed new defensive shields based on progenitor technology. The shields wouldn't stop the extinction machines, but they could buy time. Captain Rodriguez took command of a new military fleet, training officers from every council species in tactics that emphasized adaptability over rigid doctrine. And Ambassador Chen spent those years traveling the galaxy, convincing reluctant species to join the effort. She told them the story of human survival, over and over. She explained that fear was natural, but it didn't have to be paralyzing. We survived because we didn't have a choice, she told a gathering of Morthran elders. But you do have a choice. You can give up, or you can fight. And fighting doesn't mean you're fearless. It means you're scared, but you're doing it anyway. After 50 years, the galaxy started to change. Species that had never imagined fighting for survival began to prepare. The Council transformed from a loose federation into something closer to a unified government. Resources were pooled. Technology was shared. For the first time in galactic history, thousands of species were working toward a single goal. 100 years after the Prometheus returned from the dead world, Sarah Chen stood in the same council chamber where she'd first explained humanity's survival. She was old now, wrinkled and gray, but still sharp. She'd spent a century preparing the galaxy for war. Beside her stood her granddaughter, Elena Chen, who'd been appointed as the new ambassador. It was time to pass the torch. I wanted you to see this place, Sarah said. This is where it started, where we convinced the galaxy that survival was possible. Elena looked around the chamber. It had changed. Holographic displays showed the defensive networks that now protected every council world. Factory stations orbited most inhabited planets, churning out ships and weapons. The galaxy was armed and ready. Do you think it'll be enough? Elena asked. I don't know, but it's more than anyone else ever had. The progenitors faced this force alone and unprepared. We're facing it together, and we've had a century to get ready. 96 years ago, we detected the first signs. The extinction force had entered the galaxy, still distant but coming closer. The detection had been a wake-up call. Species that had been dragging their feet suddenly found motivation. The reality of the threat, the certainty of it, changed everything. What was it like? Elena asked. Back when you first told them about the extinction force? Terrifying. They didn't want to believe it. Some of them still don't. But the evidence is undeniable now. Sarah pulled up a display showing the extinction force's projected path. It was moving through the outer rim of the galaxy, system by system. Wherever it went, all artificial signals stopped. Civilizations that had been broadcasting for thousands of years went silent. How much longer? Elena asked. The computers say 204 years until they reach Council space, but we're not waiting for them to come to us. The war room on the UESS Defiance was packed with representatives from every Council species. Fleet Admiral James Park, now in his 60s, stood at the center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the entire galaxy. The extinction force follows a pattern, he said. They enter a galaxy, select targets based on technology level, and systematically sterilize each system. They're thorough, but they're predictable. And that's their weakness. He zoomed in on a section of space between the extinction force's current position and Council territory. There are 3,000 systems between them and us. Most are uninhabited, but 47 have developing civilizations. Pre-industrial, no space travel, not advanced enough to trigger the machine's attention. We're evacuating them, a Solarian officer said. Some of them, but others have agreed to help us. We're going to use their worlds as bait. The room erupted in protest. Elena, attending as an observer, felt her stomach turn. Using inhabited worlds as bait seemed wrong, even if the inhabitants had agreed. Let me finish, James said calmly. We're not sacrificing these worlds. We're fortifying them. The extinction force will arrive, detect what looks like developing technology, and move to sterilize the planet. But instead of finding primitive civilizations, they'll find the entire Council fleet waiting. He pulled up a tactical display. It showed a network of defensive positions, hidden fleet deployments, and weapon platforms disguised as natural phenomena. We're going to fight them in stages, slow them down, learn how they adapt. Every battle will give us more data, and every battle will be in a system where we've had decades to prepare the battlefield. This will take centuries, a Vrek officer said. Yes, it will, but that's fine. Humans have a saying. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. We're planting a forest. The first engagement happened 182 years after the Prometheus discovered the Witness. The location was a system with a single habitable planet, home to a species that had just discovered agriculture. They'd been evacuated years ago. The Council fleet waited in the outer system, hidden behind a gas giant. Sensor platforms disguised as asteroids watched for the extinction force's arrival. When they came in silence. No messages, no warnings. Just 1,000 ships emerging from faster-than-light travel, their hulls black and featureless, absorbing light like they were made of absence itself. Fleet Admiral Chen, Elena had followed in her grandmother's footsteps, watched from the bridge of the UESS Horizon. She was the 4th generation of her family to serve in this war that hadn't yet truly begun. All ships hold position, she ordered. Let them commit. The extinction machines moved with mechanical precision toward the inhabited planet. Their formation was perfect, unchanged from patterns the Witness had recorded millions of years ago. They were doing exactly what they'd always done. They're charging weapons, the tactical officer reported. Energy signatures match the Witness's data. They're preparing to sterilize the surface. Wait for it, Elena said. The machines reached orbital position. Their weapons powered up, ready to turn the planet's surface into molten glass. And that's when Elena gave the order. All ships, weapons free. Hit them with everything. The gas giant lit up like a newborn star as 3,000 Council ships dropped their stealth screens and fired. Railguns launched projectiles at relativistic speeds. Energy weapons carved through space. Missiles with AI guidance systems swarmed the extinction machines like angry hornets. The first wave of machines died instantly, caught completely off guard. 50 ships destroyed in the opening salvo, but the rest adapted with terrifying speed. Their formations shifted. Shields appeared, technology they'd kept hidden. They returned fire with weapons that bent space itself, creating gravitational shears that crushed 2 Council ships like empty cans. They're learning, the tactical officer said unnecessarily. Good, Elena said. So are we. All ships, Execute Maneuver Delta 7. The Council fleet broke formation, scattering in what looked like panic. The extinction machines pursued, dividing their forces to chase what they thought were fleeing prey. It was exactly what Elena wanted. "Now," she said. Hidden weapon platforms activated throughout the system. Railgun emplacements built into asteroids. Missile batteries disguised as comets. Energy weapons hidden in the planet's moon. The extinction machines found themselves in a crossfire, taking hits from every direction. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 743 extinction machines were destroyed. The Council lost 300 ships and over 50,000 people. By historical standards, it was a catastrophic loss. But by the standards of fighting an extinction-level threat, it was a victory, because they'd learned. The data from the first battle filled research labs across Council space. Scientists studied every second of the engagement, analyzing how the machines fought, how they adapted, what their limitations were. Dr. Marcus Kim, great-grandson of the original Dr. Sarah Kim, led the analysis team. "They're not as advanced as we feared," he reported to the Council. "They're incredibly sophisticated, but their technology is old. They haven't innovated in billions of years. They're using the same weapons, the same tactics, the same strategies they've always used. That doesn't make them less dangerous," Thress's successor, a being named Crystalline Thought, pointed out. "They still destroyed 300 of our ships. True, but they did it using predictable patterns. They adapt tactically but not strategically. They adjusted to our initial attack, but when we changed tactics, they fell back on programmed responses. Their machines following ancient programming. That's exploitable." The research led to new strategies. The Council fleet began using unpredictable tactics, things that violated traditional military doctrine. Human naval officers, trained in the stories of Earth's naval battles, introduced concepts like feints and false retreats. Solarian mathematicians developed algorithms that created truly random movement patterns, making it impossible for the machines to predict fleet positions. The Wreck contributed quantum communication systems that couldn't be intercepted. The Morthrin, with their unique understanding of energy states, designed weapons that phased through the machine's shields, and the battles continued. 50 years of continuous warfare. The Extinction Force pushed deeper into the galaxy, and the Council fleet fought them at every system. Sometimes the Council won, sometimes they lost. But every battle taught them something new. The war changed the galaxy in ways no one had predicted. Species that had lived in isolation for thousands of years found themselves working together, sharing technology, merging cultures. The Wreck, who'd once feared change, became adaptable innovators. The Morthrin, who'd feared separation, learned to work in distributed teams across vast distances. And humanity, the species that had always lived with disaster, became the backbone of the resistance. Not because humans were better fighters or smarter strategists, but because they'd never expected the universe to be safe. They'd been preparing for existential threats their entire evolutionary history. Admiral Elena Chen, now in her 70s, stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched another battle unfold. It was the 437th major engagement. She'd stopped counting minor skirmishes. "They're adapting faster," her tactical officer reported. "They're using tactics we haven't seen before." Elena studied the display. The officer was right. The extinction machines were evolving, learning from their defeats. The programming that had kept them predictable for billions of years was starting to change. "Send a message to all ships," Elena said. "The enemy is learning." "Good. That means we're hurting them. That means they're scared. Keep hitting them. Show them what happens when they try to make humans extinct." The Council fleet pressed the attack, and the extinction machines fell back. It was the first time in recorded history that they'd retreated. 247 years after the war began, a human exploration team made a discovery that changed everything. On a dead world in the Outer Rim, buried under miles of rock, they found a facility. It was old, older than the progenitor civilization, older than most stars in the galaxy. And it was still active. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the lead researcher, stood in the facility's control room, staring at displays that hadn't been touched in 3 billion years. "This is it," she said. This is where they come from. This is the Extinction Force's origin point. The facility was a factory designed to build the extinction machines, and it was still building them. Somewhere in the depths of this ancient structure, construction bays were producing new machines, replacing the ones the Council had destroyed. "Can we shut it down?" her assistant asked. "I don't know. The control systems I can't even describe them. The technology is so far beyond anything we understand. It'd be like giving a caveman a nuclear reactor and asking him to turn it off." But as Yuki studied the facility, she noticed something. The construction process was slow, much slower than it should be. The factory was damaged, barely functioning. Billions of years of operation had taken their toll. "How many machines can it produce?" she asked the facility's computer, which somehow understood her question despite the 3 billion-year language gap. "Current production capacity, 47 units per standard galactic year. Original capacity, 10,000 units per cycle." Yuki felt hope for the first time in decades. "It's dying. The factory is dying. That's why they haven't overwhelmed us. They're fighting with a limited force because they can't build replacements fast enough." She immediately sent the data back to Council space. If the factory was the source and if it could be destroyed, the war could be won. The Council's response was swift. Every available ship, every weapon, every resource was redirected toward a single goal: destroy the factory. But it wasn't that simple. The factory was defended by over 2,000 extinction machines, more than had been seen in any single battle. It was protected by shields that could withstand supernova-level energy, and it was located in a region of space where the laws of physics behaved strangely, making conventional faster-than-light travel impossible. "It's a suicide mission," Admiral Chen said flatly, looking at the tactical projections. "Any fleet we send won't make it back." "Then we make sure it counts," replied Admiral Crix, a Solarian who'd earned his rank through 50 years of combat. "We get one shot at this. We make it count." The plan was insane, requiring coordination between 10,000 ships from 40 species. It required weapons that hadn't been tested, tactics that had never been tried, and a level of sacrifice that made veteran officers uncomfortable. But it was the only plan that had a chance of working. 303 years after Sarah Chen first told the Council about the extinction threat, the combined fleets of the galaxy gathered at the edge of the anomalous region. It was the largest armada ever assembled. 10,000 warships, 500 support vessels, and over 2 million people, all volunteers, all knowing the odds. Admiral Elena Chen was 83 years old. She should have retired decades ago, but she'd made a promise to her grandmother, and she intended to keep it. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. You know the mission. We're going to do what every species said was impossible. We're going to stop an extinction force that's been operating for 3 billion years. We're going to tell the universe that life doesn't surrender, that intelligence doesn't bow to inevitable destruction, that when something tries to make us extinct, we fight back." She paused, looking at the faces of her bridge crew. Human, Solarian, Vrek, Morthrin, and a dozen other species, all working together. "My grandmother used to tell me a story. Thousands of years ago, there was a human king named Leonidas. He and 300 soldiers held a narrow pass against an army of millions. They knew they'd die. They went anyway, because some things are worth dying for. Today, we're those 300 soldiers, and we're going to hold the line." The fleet entered the anomalous region. Space twisted around them, turning stars into streaks of light. Navigation systems went haywire, but human pilots, trained in dead reckoning and spatial awareness, guided the fleet through. The extinction machines were waiting. 2,000 of them arranged in defensive formations around the factory. They opened fire the moment the Council fleet emerged from the spatial distortion. The battle was chaos. Ships exploded. Energy weapons turned space into a light show. The extinction machines fought with desperate intensity, as if they understood that this was the end. "All ships execute attack pattern Omega," Elena ordered. "Press the attack. Don't stop for anything." The Council fleet formed into a spear, driving toward the factory. Ships in the lead were destroyed, but others took their place. The formation never broke. For every ship that died, 2 more pushed forward. "We're taking heavy casualties," her tactical officer reported. 40% losses in the first wave. "Keep going," Elena said. We only need to reach the factory. The UESS Horizon shook as an energy beam clipped its shields. Warning alarms filled the bridge, but Elena kept her eyes on the tactical display, watching the distance to the factory shrink. 300 kilometers, the helmsman said. 200, 100. Fire the Nova Bomb, Elena ordered. The Nova Bomb was humanity's final innovation in weaponry. It was a weapon that shouldn't exist, built using technology from a dozen species and powered by controlled matter-antimatter annihilation. The progenitors had never built anything like it, because they'd never been desperate enough. The Council fleet had exactly one. The bomb launched from the Horizon's main bay, accelerating on a pillar of nuclear fire. Extinction machines tried to intercept it, but escort ships sacrificed themselves to keep the path clear. The bomb covered the last 50 kilometers in seconds and struck the factory's shields. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the shield collapsed, overloaded by energy equivalent to a stellar core. The bomb penetrated the factory's structure and detonated in the heart of the construction bays. The explosion was visible across half the galaxy. The factory, which had operated for 3 billion years, simply ceased to exist. And with it, every extinction machine in the system died, their connection to the factory's central intelligence severed. The aftermath of the battle was eerie. The anomalous region of space was filled with debris, the wreckage of thousands of ships. The Council fleet had been reduced to less than 3,000 vessels. Over 1 million people were dead, but they'd won. Admiral Chen sat in her command chair, surrounded by damage reports and casualty lists, and felt tears running down her face. They'd done it. Against impossible odds, against an enemy that had destroyed thousands of civilizations, they'd won. "Admiral, we're receiving messages from across the galaxy," the communications officer said. "Everyone's picking up the destruction of the factory. The extinction machines are shutting down everywhere. We won." Elena nodded, too exhausted to speak. She thought about her grandmother, who'd spent her entire life preparing for this moment. She thought about all the humans who'd come before, surviving ice ages and volcanic winters and asteroid impacts, never knowing that they were preparing their descendants for this. "Send a message to Earth," Elena said finally. "Tell them it's over. Tell them humanity survived one more extinction." The years following the battle were strange. The galaxy had spent 3 centuries preparing for war, and suddenly, the war was over. Species had to relearn how to live without the constant threat of extinction hanging over them. The Council transformed again, becoming less of a military alliance and more of a true federation. Trade flourished, culture exploded. Species that had been too busy surviving to create art started building museums and composing symphonies. And humanity, the species that had lived with disaster for millions of years, had to figure out how to live in peace. It wasn't easy. Human military officers found themselves with nothing to fight. Human engineers who'd spent decades building weapons had to learn to build cities instead. The entire species had to adjust to a universe that wasn't actively trying to kill them. "Is this what normal feels like?" a young human asked Ambassador Kai Chen, Elena's grandson, who now held his family's traditional position. "I have no idea," Kai admitted. "No human in history has ever lived in a truly safe galaxy. This is new for all of us, but gradually, humanity adapted. Because adaptation was what they did best. Human explorers set out to chart the galaxy properly, this time looking for wonders instead of threats. Human scientists turned their attention to understanding the universe instead of destroying enemies. Human artists created works that captured the whole saga, ensuring that no one would ever forget the 3-century war. 500 years after Sarah Chen first walked into the council chamber, a memorial was built on Earth. It stood at the exact spot where the first human had looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. The memorial was simple. A wall with the names of every person who'd died fighting the extinction machines. Over 2 million names, in every language spoken in the galaxy. At the dedication ceremony, Ambassador Kai Chen stood before the gathered crowd and told the story one more time. "We survived because we were stubborn. We survived because we refused to give up, even when giving up was the logical choice. Every species in this galaxy evolved differently, developed different traits, different advantages. But somewhere in human history, we developed something unique. We developed the ability to look at impossible odds and say, "Watch me." He gestured to the memorial wall. These people died stopping an extinction force that had operated for 3 billion years. They died protecting species they'd never met, defending worlds they'd never visited. They died because that's what humans do. We protect, we endure, we survive. The crowd was silent, looking at the names. Human names, yes, but also Solarian names, Vrek names, Morthrin names. Every species that had fought in the war was represented. My great-great-grandmother once said that humanity wasn't special because we were fearless. We were special because we were scared, but we did it anyway. That's still true. We're still scared of the dark, scared of the unknown, scared of death. But we walk into the dark anyway. We explore the unknown. And when death comes for us, or the people we love, we fight. He looked up at the sky, where Earth's orbital structures caught the sunlight. The extinction force is gone. The factory is destroyed. But there are still dangers out there. There always will be. The universe is vast and strange and full of things we don't understand. But that's okay, because humans don't fear the unknown. We investigate it, we study it, we figure it out. And if it tries to hurt us, we make sure it regrets it. In the centuries that followed, the story of humanity's survival became a foundational myth for the galactic community. Children of every species learned about the death world that had produced a species crazy enough to fight extinction itself. Schools taught the history of the 3-century war, and the lesson that came from it spread throughout the galaxy. Fear is natural, but fear doesn't have to stop you. The Vrek, who'd once been paralyzed by change, became bold explorers. The Morthrin, who'd feared separation, learned to celebrate independence. Every species that had hidden from the extinction threat learned that they were stronger than they'd believed. And at the center of it all was the recognition that humanity had given the galaxy a gift. Not technology, not weapons, not even the victory itself. The gift was perspective. Humans showed us that survival isn't about being the strongest or the smartest, a Solarian historian wrote. It's about refusing to give up. It's about looking at a universe that wants you dead and deciding to live anyway. Every species in the galaxy had the capacity for this. We just needed humans to remind us. The story of why humans don't fear the unknown isn't really about fearlessness. It's about what you do with fear. Every human who ever lived was scared of something. The early humans were scared of the dark, scared of predators, scared of starvation. They had every reason to give up, to hide, to let extinction take them. But they didn't. They walked out of Africa into unknown lands. They crossed oceans not knowing what was on the other side. They built civilizations knowing that disasters would destroy them. They reached for the stars knowing that space could kill them in 1,000 different ways. Because humans learned a long time ago that fear is just information. It tells you something's dangerous. It doesn't tell you to stop. The ice ages were dangerous, but humans survived. The volcanic winter was dangerous, but humans survived. The extinction machines were dangerous, but with the help of their galactic family, humans survived. Every extinction event, every disaster, every close call with oblivion taught humanity the same lesson. You can die afraid, or you can die fighting. And if you fight, sometimes you don't die at all. That's why humans don't fear the unknown. Not because we're brave, but because we've met the unknown before. We've walked into the dark and come back. We've faced extinction and survived. We've looked at impossible odds and found a way through. The universe tried to kill humanity 1,000 times. It failed every time. And that failure taught us something important. We're tougher than we look, more stubborn than we should be, and absolutely terrible at accepting defeat. So when the next disaster comes, whatever it is, humanity will do what it always does. We'll be scared. We'll be unprepared. We'll probably mess things up at first. But we'll adapt. We'll learn. And we'll survive. Because that's what humans do. We survive. And then we help everyone else survive too. The galaxy learned that lesson from humanity. The lesson that life isn't about avoiding danger. It's about facing danger and coming out the other side. It's about looking at extinction and saying, not today. That's the human legacy. Not monuments or technology or even the great victory against the extinction machines. The legacy is simpler and more profound. The knowledge that any species, any civilization, any person can choose to survive, can choose to fight, can choose to walk into the unknown and make it known. Fear is natural. Giving up is easy. But surviving? That's human. If you want to see what happens when humans meet the next impossible challenge, the next video is already waiting for you.